Hello and welcome. My name is Jimmy and today we're going to check out two new Mazda products. This is a Mazda 3 and that's a Mazda CX-30. Now you might be saying those aren't new products, and you're right, they're not. But these are the new turbo variants. Take a look at the badge in the back. This is actually quite an interesting comparison because, well, they are quite comparable. The 3 and the CX-30 shares a lot. But there are some key differences, and that's exactly what this video is going to go over today. So let's get on to it. First off, I am in Canada, so these are the Canadian spec models, which means this Mazda 3 here is called the Sport, and as equipped is $35,800. And the CX-30, this is $36,450, which means there's only a $650 difference in Canada. In the US, the price difference between the top trims is only about $150, but there are plenty of trim differences between the US and the Canadian spec model. So I won't go into that in this video, but I will talk about how the Canadian models are different. First off, the exterior. Obviously, there is a difference here, as one is a hatchback and the other is a lifted hatch. I think some classify them as CUVs. The wheelbase and the overall length on the CX-30 is slightly shorter than that of the Mazda 3, but it is 5 inches taller. And not all of that is just from the ground clearance. The CX-30 pushes 8 inches of ground clearance, while the Mazda 3 is only at 5.5. The sheet metal, well, it shares a lot of the same Kodo design language, which we have some sharper creases up front that flows to smoother curves on the side. While we do get a C-pillar window on the CX-30, which can aid in a little bit of that 3/4 visibility, around the entire CX-30, we have plenty of body cladding to emphasize just its off-road credibility. But let's be honest, no one's really going to take this off-road other than maybe TFL. Another design element that's quite different are these amber lights up front. On the CX-30, they just sit just right on the bottom here above the front bumper and gives the CX-30 a more distinctive look. And I really like how it shines up. Unlike the Mazda 3 where it just goes on and off, the CX-30, it goes on but fades off. It's actually a really cool effect that is across all the turn signals on the CX-30. Moving on to the inside, starting with the trunk, the CX-30 has a power liftgate, while the Mazda 3, well, it's manually operated. In terms of sizing, the CX-30's trunk is a little bit bigger with the seats up. With them folded, well, it's actually quite similar. So honestly, the difference here isn't huge, and it's unlikely it's a deciding factor. Moving to the rear seats, there's almost 2 inches more headroom on the CX-30 and about 1 inch more legroom overall. On the CX-30, we also have some vents back here that can aid circulation. As for the front seats, we do have slightly more headroom, but there's slightly less legroom on the CX-30. The seats themselves are actually quite similar, but I do notice that I sit higher on the CX-30. When it comes to the dash layout, the cluster both have a digital display in the center to show the vehicle speed and other safety items. In the center of the dash, we have a large widescreen infotainment system that has both Apple CarPlay as well as Android Auto. While this generation removed the ability to use the touchscreen, I actually don't mind it, as the rotary wheel down here works tremendously well. One thing that is missing when using the infotainment is if you pop it into reverse, the Mazda 3 has a 360 camera, while the CX-30 doesn't. And this is, well, just in Canada, because I took a look on the US website, you do get a 360 camera in the US, but for whatever reason, we just don't get it here. Overall, on the inside, there isn't a huge difference. The CX-30 is definitely a little roomier as we expect, and that 3/4 window does make it easier to look out, but only by a bit. As expected, the CX-30 weighs a little bit more at 3,510 pounds compared to 3,383 on the Mazda 3, which means it also uses a little bit more fuel. In the city, it uses 10.5 liters for 100 kilometers, that's 22 miles per gallon, while the 3 consumes 10.1 at 23 miles per gallon. On the highway, the CX-30 sips 7.9 liters for 100 kilometers or 30 miles per gallon, while the 3, that's 7.5 at 31 miles per gallon. Behind the wheel, the CX-30 is quite competent. I actually really love how all Mazda feels. Something that you'll notice comparing the CX-30 to the 3 is the CX-30 is definitely higher riding. I already mentioned that when I was talking about the interior, but sitting in here and driving, you actually have a better commanding view of the road. And I definitely know there are quite a few people that love that. In speaking with Mazda themselves, they have said the CX-30 and the Mazda 3 differ in tuning, software tuning. So how the throttle is modulated, how the transmission works, well, all that is different because, well, the CX-30 is an SUV versus the Mazda 3's more sportier nature. So yeah, behind the wheel, you definitely feel it, because the CX-30 is a little bit more subdued, and because of the higher final drive ratio, well, it is a little bit slower than the Mazda 3. What's kind of interesting is Mazda doesn't care about 0 to 60 times. They care about how it feels, how much G the vehicle pulls. And I can understand that, because 0 to 60 is just a measurement of how fast it can go from, well, standstill. It doesn't necessarily mean that the vehicle is quick and able to accelerate. What Mazda wants is a vehicle that is able to accelerate any time that you need it to. So even if you're driving on the road, like I am right now, if you need to, well, accelerate, dip the throttle, and it's immediate. There's a few reasons for that. First, the turbo motor, of course, has plenty of torque. Even from 2000 RPM and on, well, it's full torque. It actually makes the car a lot more engaging to drive. The second part is the 6-speed automatic. Sure, it's not a 8 or even a 10-speed automatic like some manufacturers do, but a 6-speed, what it does is there's just less ratios for the vehicle to go through. And because it has a pretty flat torque curve, it's able to better predict what gear it should be in for you to accelerate. So when you're in sport mode, for example, it holds the revs in a place where it's just in that meat of the torque curve. So it doesn't need to downshift mid-corner, which can upset the handling of the car and upset the balance. Something that most people don't think about, but race car drivers, they do, because you don't shift mid-turn. At the apex, it's just the midpoint. That's when you lift off the brake and on the accelerator. You don't shift it, you shift before the turn. Mazda, they're doing that in the software so that you don't have to think about that. That's super clever. And because the CX-30 is an SUV, there's an SUV off-road mode. Let's be honest, no one really is going to take this off-road, but if you do plan to take it off-road, you can, because it's able to send more torque to the rear end, and it can individually brake wheels where it needs to send power where it has traction. Stuff like this is what makes Mazda vehicles so good and so smart. But let's hop in to the Mazda 3 so we can feel the difference in that. While driving the Mazda 3, there are 3 features that are different. And this is only for the Canadian spec models, as in the US it's a little different. But the first is the 360 camera, which I talked about a little bit earlier. It's actually really clear, and it's a really good 360 camera that I get in the Mazda 3. And for whatever reason, you just don't get it in the CX-30. It's a shame, really. It's a really good system. But like I said, in the US, you do get it. You also get the front parking sensors, which I also don't get here. I don't know why the Canadian spec CX-30 gets all that ripped out. The Canadian spec CX-30 also doesn't have traffic jam assist, which was launched in the Mazda 3. What traffic jam assist does is under 40 miles per hour, if you have it turned on, it looks at the car in front of you, it looks at the road, it looks at the road markings, and basically tries to follow the vehicle in front. It's basically a combination of adaptive cruise control as well as lane keep assist to, well, keep you within your lanes. Its suggested use is really during heavier traffic, thus the name, traffic jam assist. So it's able to follow the vehicle in front, come to a complete stop if needed. I mean, it's a good system, but you just can't get it in the CX-30. The CX-30's lane keep assist, it bounces you between the lanes a little bit, so it's not as full featured as what we have here in the Mazda 3. But in terms of driving, it's very similar. Both have a very similar Mazda feel to them. The steering is precise. It's just a great driving vehicle. They both are. But in the 3, lower center of gravity, lower weight, and the shorter final drive ratio means that this is a little bit more peppy, and you definitely feel it. You don't even have to throw into sport mode. I mean, you can, it definitely makes a difference, but it just feels a little bit better. Honestly though, unless you're driving them back to back, the CX-30 and the Mazda 3, they're probably not going to notice a difference. However, for me, the 3 just feels a little bit more engaging, and that's definitely the best part about it. In any case, let's go to the final thoughts. And that's about it for differences between these two models. Is it worth the $650 in Canada or the $150 in the US? Hard to say. Personally, I will still take the Mazda 3 because I like the lower driving seating position. I like just how it feels. It's a little bit more sporty than the CX-30. But for some, especially those are family orientated, the CX-30 does make a little bit more sense. I actually have a video of how, well, car seats fit in both of these cars, linked whichever corner it is, I cannot remember. But you can check out that video to see how a Collect Link as well as a Collect Foomph fits inside both of these. In any case, thank you so much for watching this video. Like the video if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. And it's too cold to stand out here, so I'm gonna go for a drive and I'll talk to you later. Take care.